Here we are, Math 1, triangle, angle, angle, side, congruency. Okay, so here's our fourth one. Then we'll have all the rules we need. So we've dealt with side, side, side. If we have three sides of two triangles and the corresponding sides are congruent, yes, they're congruent. We have side, angle, side. Or if we have two sides and the angle in between of two triangles and they're the corresponding pieces and they're congruent, then those are congruent. If we have angle, side, angle, so two angles and the side in between, then yes, those are congruent of two triangles if they're the corresponding pieces. And so our final one is what we call angle, angle, side. Okay, this one's very similar to angle, side, angle. The difference is now the side isn't in between. Okay, so if you have two angles, and if it's the side in between, that would be angle, side, angle. If it's one of these other sides, okay, then it would be angle, angle, side. So essentially, if we have two triangles and they have two angles that are congruent, and a side not between, or a side between, as long as it matches for both. So if they're both in between, that's angle, side, angle. If it's not in between, that's angle, angle, side. If one is between and one is not between, okay, that's not congruent. Okay, that's still an issue. That one, it wouldn't work. All right, so here we go. Just a reminder, when you're doing this, look to see what information you have. Okay, you should have 3 pieces of information. We always need 3. See what you have explicitly. Sometimes you don't have it explicitly and you have these situations, like they may share a side. That side would be congruent. Okay, so they probably wouldn't tell you that. They would say maybe something like this. And then you'd have to realize that yes, it's got 2 sides, but that third side is the one that it shares. That would still be congruent by side, side, side. The other one is when we get that vertical angle, where the angles form an X. Those angles opposite each other are congruent. So they may give you some pieces, but not 1. And you've got 1, 2, and then that third that they won't tell you about. All right, so let's take a look at this. All right, so we look at number 1. So I've got 1 angle. I've got 2 angles. Okay, now do they share a side? Yes. So we've also got a side. So is that side in between our angles? Nope. Is it for both of them? Not between either of them? So we'd say yes by angle, angle, side. Okay. Even though the way I wrote it, you may want to say that's angle, side, angle. It's not, because that side isn't between those 2 angles. Okay, number 2, I've got 1 side, 2 sides, no angles, no other side. So not enough information, and I have to write not congruent. Okay, number 3, got 1 angle, 2 angles. Then they share a side, so we've got the sides. Same pattern on both, so yes by angle, angle, side. Number 4, 1, 2 angles, 1, 2 angles, and a side. Is the side in between them? Nope, so yes by angle, angle, side. Okay, number 5, got an angle here, and then a side that's not in between them. Now, you may want to look at that and say, oops, I meant to erase that. You may look at that and say, well, look, that side is in between those 2 angles. Remember, when we say in between, it's the side that touches both angles. Does this side touch both? It doesn't. So it still works by angle, angle, side. Okay, now we look at number 6. I look at this. I have a side and an angle. Okay, that's not one of them. I have a side and an angle and a side. That's one of them, but they're not the same, so we have to say not congruent. Okay, on number 7, I share an angle. Right angles are congruent. Two angles. Is the side in between, meaning is the side touching both of them? Nope. So by angle, angle, side, they are congruent. Number 8, they share a side. I've got an angle and two sides, and the angle isn't between them, so that's not congruent. Okay, if we look back at our rules, we can have two sides and one angle, but that angle has to be in between. Okay, if we have two angles and one side, it'll work. If we have all three sides, it'll work. If we have two sides and an angle, as long as the angle is in between, it'll work. Alright, let's take a look at the rest of these ones. So, number 9, we share a side, we have one angle. No other information here, so we have to say not congruent. Number 10, one angle, and they share just one side. Once again, not congruent. 11, they share a side, and they have two others, so we've got three sides. So we say yes by side, side, side. Okay, 12, we've got a side they share, and an angle and another side. So a side and an angle and a side, an angle and a side, and the angle's in between both sides, so we say yes by side, angle, side. Okay, 13, same thing. Two angles now, and it's the side in between, so that's not like these ones up here, okay, where the side wasn't in between. Since it's in between, now it's angle, side, angle. Okay, and you've got to make that distinction. 14, we've got three angles, angle, angle, angle. Okay, that's not one of our rules. That's actually a rule of similarity, which you'll learn later. Okay, now 15, we share an angle. We have an angle here, an angle there, angle here, angle there. The side isn't in between, so yes, they're congruent by angle, angle, side. So essentially, if you have two angles on one side, it's going to work. The distinction is whether it's angle, side, angle, or angle, angle, side. And that all depends on where you put the side. That'll determine which one you get. Okay, number 16, got an angle, the side's outside of it, so the angle's in between. So side, angle, side. And yes, they'd be congruent. Okay, now let's give the additional reasons. Alright, so we take a look at this, and the first ones, okay, the first 4, we're doing angle, angle, side. Okay, so often with these ones, there could be multiple options here. So let's take a look at this first. So we've got our angle here, and we've got our side. Okay, now angle, angle, side means we've got an angle already touching our side, so that third angle can't touch our side. So it's got to be K and X. That's the only option on this one. Angle K would have to be congruent to angle X. Okay, same with 18. We've got that vertical angle, so we've got our angle, and we've got a side touching that angle. So our other angle can't touch it, so it can't be C, and it can't be Z. It's got to be A and X. So angle A has to be congruent to angle X. Alright, now 19, we've got an angle and a side touching, so it's got to be the angle not touching. Angle and a side, so it's got to be the angle, so angle W has to be congruent to angle G. Okay, now in 20, we've got two angles. Now here's where there's an option. Okay, but you got to make sure you do it right depending on the triangle. I know it can't be in between the two angles, okay, or else it would be angle, side, angle. So it can either be this angle YX, and which one would that work with? Well, it's touching angle, the angle with the 3 marks, so that would have to be KL. So you could go YX is congruent to KL, or the other option here is if it were touching this side. Okay, so it could be YW is congruent to JL. Okay, Either one of those would work and still fulfill the angle side. It just can't be the side in between. Alright, 21, now we got angle, side, angle. So I've got one angle, two angles, they share a side, but now that angle has to touch that side. So it has to be this one of angle H. So IH, what is that, L? And that one has to be congruent to angle, this other one touching it, which would be angle HIG. Okay. 22 wants all three sides. They share a side, so we don't worry about that one. We've got the other side, so that one should be pretty easy. Side JU congruent with side UT. Okay. 23, now we got side, angle, side. So I've got a side and an angle touching that side. So my other side has to touch that same one. So it's got to be that one and that one. So VU has to be congruent to GF. Alright, 24, now we're back to angle, angle, side. So I've got an angle and a side that's not touching that angle. Okay, so I got that side and that outside angle. So now I need the angle that would be touching the side. So it could be angle C, but which one would that match up with? Because here's where it can be tricky. We got to make sure they match up. So I could do angle C or I could do angle B. Either one would work over here, B or C. But which one would it probably match up with? Okay, well, C would probably match up with M, and L probably with B. Does it really matter? Not really if we don't have anything else out, honestly. Oh, L. Because then that would just change how our triangle looked, and that wouldn't be bad either. Alright, 25, angle, side, angle. So I've got the angle, okay, and then the side has to be in between. So where's my other angle at? Well, it's going to have to be angle J for that triangle, and angle E for the other triangle. Okay, last one here, side, angle, side. Got a side, the angle, the vertical angle, so it's got to be the other side touching the angle, which would be side SR. Has to be congruent to this side RF for it to work. And there we go, guys.